Hi, my name is Graeme Mutchler, and I play bass trombone in the Utah Symphony. When I was in 7th grade, my mom had a really keen interest in exposing all of her kids to music. So she approached me and said, you know, I'd like you to try music for at least a couple weeks. And if you do it, I'll take you to Six Flags Over Texas. And we were living in Texas at the time. It was my absolute favorite place to go. So that was a good deal for me. So I went to the band director's office and I said, you know, I'd like an instrument and I'm gonna just use it for about 2 weeks. If you don't mind, I don't really care what you give me, just because I'm gonna get a pretty good deal, the Six Flags Over Texas, out of this. So he gave me a trombone. It wasn't a very good trombone. It's a tenor trombone. I took it home and sure enough, it kind of hooked. I really fell in love with it. I continued on with it through high school and into college. So the bass trombone in the orchestra has, I feel, a unique role and an important role. There's only one bass trombone in the orchestra, and there's 2 tenor trombones, and then there's a tuba, and that comprises the low brass section. And I really see my role as a bass trombone player as a bridge between the tenor trombones, who have more of a brilliant sound, more of a, for lack of a better word, bright sound, and then the tuba, who's got a really, you know, big, huge, round sound. And I feel like my job description has to have a little bit of all of that in there. I need to be able to play with the tenor trombone players and sound like a big tenor trombone, and I also need to be able to play with the tuba and just add a level of just large sound with the tuba, but different than the tuba sound. The bass trombone has, for lack of a better term, just more plumbing on it. The more tubes, and the tubes themselves are a little bit bigger compared to the tenor trombone. But the overall construction is pretty much the same. I primarily play one instrument in the orchestra, and that is a bass trombone. I know that in many other sections throughout the orchestra, there are players who have their primary instrument and then a separate instrument that's maybe in a different key, or it's smaller or bigger. For instance, our principal trombone player, he has an alto trombone, which is what we call baby trombone. It's maybe half the size of a bass trombone. It's in a different key. It's helpful for different composers. It's a different sound quality. Generally speaking, I just play this, and it's up to me to continue to mold the sound. And if it's a very light symphony, I need to continually make my sound small and tight to match what these guys are doing, especially if they're on smaller instruments. There does exist a contrabass trombone. It's about as tall as I am. I do not own one. They're pretty expensive. And that's also in a different key, and that's kind of referred to as a tuba on a stick. It's just huge. A lot of opera companies will use them. Opera composers will use them. It's a really neat instrument, and someday I'd like to be able to kind of dive into that. But as far as my job is concerned, this is one size fits all. So part of the construction of the trombone is that we have different parts that go together. There's a slide, there's a big bell section, and then there's a mouthpiece. And the mouthpiece is really one of the more important parts of the instrument, and also the production of sound in the instrument. I kind of feel like the closer that this whole thing is to your mouth or your embouchure or the lips, the more important it gets. So the selection of mouthpiece is very important. And also being able to buzz the mouthpiece is really important, because that's ultimately what kind of makes contact with, you know, human flesh and blood, which is connected to your brain, which has all the musical ideas. So if I take away the mouthpiece and I try to play my instrument with it, you're going to hear this. Kind of sounds like an elephant. I think that's kind of a cool sound, but unfortunately, that's just not employable. If I tried to do that here at work, a lot of my colleagues, including the music director, would probably look at me a little funny. So that's why the mouthpiece is so important. I can show you mouthpiece buzzing, which is such an important part of a daily routine, something that I do regularly. It kind of helps recalibrate, again, this connection between the mind and then the physiological component of playing, and then ultimately to this, which is basically a big microphone to what's going on here. So I'm going to mouthpiece buzz. And what you'll hear while I'm doing that is kind of a glissando effect, and that just allows for the lips to be able to buzz with the air to produce a really, really rich sound that ultimately, if I put it in here, will be able to have the sound that I'd like to play in the orchestra. What I love about my job in an orchestra, and also specifically the Utah Symphony, is, like I said, I'm the only one that plays bass trombone in the orchestra. My role is unique. I don't share a part with anybody else. Also, depending on what we're playing, by and large, we sit around a lot. And then when we play, we're kind of the main event. And personally, I love that. I love to sit back, especially here in the Utah Symphony. I like to watch my colleagues. I sit in the very back of the orchestra. I get to enjoy their musicianship, and then I can jump in and add to it. So yeah, I would never want to play another instrument besides the bass trombone, which is kind of a neat thing to be able to say, that I love my job that much. So one of the things that the trombone, bass trombone, tenor trombone, contrabass trombone, one of the things that we can do that really nobody else can offer is to do a true glissando. And that is really one of the things that we can do because we have a slide. We don't have buttons or valves like a trumpet does or a French horn, where they change notes by depressing a valve, and or even a tuba player for that matter. It changes the pitch, it opens up more tubing, less tubing. And so what I'd like to demonstrate now is there's a big moment in a piece called the Harry Janos Suite by Zoltán Kodály. And it's a pretty exposed spot. It's for tuba and bass trombone. We kind of start this, the battle and defeat of Napoleon. It's a really, really cool spot, and it really shows the glissando aspect of the trombone. As a trombone player, we kind of refer to ourselves as pack animals. We don't have just a tremendous amount of solo repertoire like maybe a violin or a cello player would. We truly come to life in the context of the orchestra. And being a part of something great and being a small part of that is really what I love. To know that, yeah, I can give a recital or something like that, and that's a lot of fun and it's very edifying to do, but at the end of the day, to be able to play a part in a great musical production, especially with a great orchestra like the Utah Symphony, there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction that I get as a musician. So one of the things I'd like to play now is a solo that we actually, as trombone players, have stolen from another instrument section. We are kind of in the same register as the cellos, and one of the greatest composers to ever have lived and to write music is Johann Sebastian Bach. And so he has written Bach cello suites, and without a ton of music that we can choose, we tend to steal music. We steal music from cellos, or we have, parts and really neat solos that we have taken from other instruments that we, drop down a couple octaves because we don't play in the same octaves as the flutes or the clarinets for that matter. So what I'd like to play for you is the beginning section to the Bach Sarabande from Cello Suite number 5.